righteousness. Why, if it's right, you honor it. If it's wrong, you discredit it. But you should not make it a political issue. Isaiah 5:20. Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20. And the scripture says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Anyone care to give me a definition of woe? What does that woe mean? Why is that woe there? Why is woe there? What does that mean?
Trouble or affliction.
Yes, trouble or affliction, exactly. Trouble is coming to those that will call something that is evil good and something that is good call it evil. Or something that is of the devil, darkness, to put that in the light and call it righteous of God, and something that's of God and call it of the devil. In other words, these people have skewed value system. They are distorted and they are pretty much corrupt in their morality. We should never politicize righteousness. There are a few things that can disturb an easygoing spirit like mine. In recent years, I have noticed a trend in politics, which is very vicious and potentially damaging to others. It started back in 1973. In January 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down the now infamous Roe versus Wade decision legalizing abortion on demand. The liberals in the country, under the guise of defending a woman's right to make a choice, they made it into a choice issue rather than a moral issue. In other words, a woman can now kill her unborn child and say, I have control of my own body. I have a right to choose. I'm pro-choice. It should never have been made into a choice issue. It was a moral issue from the beginning. Let's say someone decides they want to break into your house and rob your house, and they say, oh, that's a choice issue. Does that make it right?
No.
I have a choice to break into your house or your neighbor's house, and I chose yours. So therefore, since I chose yours and not your neighbor, I should be okay. Because after all, you should love your neighbor. All right? It's a very warped sense of morality. So they made abortion into a choice issue, and they removed the morality from it. The woman does have the right to choose. She has the right not to choose to have sexual relation with someone who is not her husband, who is not the father of her children, and probably will not take care of her children. In other words, it comes down to a moral issue. Well, after 40 plus years, and over 55,000 innocent unborn murders have occurred, they continue to promote the pro-choice. Woman has a right to do whatever she wants with her own body agenda. They continue to promote this. Have they not seen evidence supporting what the pro-lifers have been saying all along, that the newly conceived child has a detectable heartbeat within the first 6 weeks of conception? But the pro-abortion left-wingers will say, I am a heartless right-winger, because I want to take away a woman's right to choose. In doing this, they once again fall for the satanic trap of what? Politicizing righteousness. We should never ever politicize righteousness. It is a dangerous thing. And when we do this, we then cause people to err because they believe they have a right to do something that may be against God. Okay, now, look at my notes here. As a parent, you have the right to correct your child, correct?
Yes.
Now, if you correct your child the proper way, that is not child abuse, correct?
Correct.
I totally agree with the state legislature. They passed legislation just this past week so that a minor, a student in school, must get consent from their parents before having an abortion. I agree with that. Now, some will say that is denying the child their right to control their own body. What do y'all think about that? Any comments about that?
If they don't have the right to control their own body, they should be living in their own house.
All right. All right. The sister says if she has a right to control her own body, she should be living at her own house. That's a good point. Anyone else?
The child has the right
What
to
was
choose
the-
their own body, or control their own body.
I should
The child has the right to control their own body.
Right.
Their mind.
no.
Correct. You can correct your child, which means you can restrict certain things from him or her, right? Some things must be restricted.
Right.
But liberalism and those that want to politicize righteousness will say, if you do that, you're denying the person their constitutional rights. Now, the sister says, if they have control of their own body, they should live in their own house. But what else do we see about this? What else in this matter? Let's say, for example, this transgender issue. Kids wanted to go and change their gender from female to male or vice versa. Should a parent have anything to say about that?
Yes.
Yes.
It's the child's body. So why should the parent have anything to say about it? We play devil's advocate here.
Does the,
What's your reason for having some say-so in whether or not your child changes his or her gender?
does the child,
should understand that the way they're born is just the way they're born. You're either born male or you're born female. There's no parents nowadays leave it up to the child whether they want to be male one day, female the next. But the way God created you is the way you were created.
Okay,
And they need to understand that there is no in between, there is no gray areas,
all right.
black and white.
Okay, yes, young lady?
Children were like easy to believe things, like when they have these transgender people going to like like kindergarten and pre-K, going to read them books about what your gender is and stuff, like they're gonna believe it because they're young and their brains haven't grown.
Okay, so she's saying because young people don't have a fully developed brain and they're gullible, they can easily be swayed and brainwashed. And that is so true. So the parent is there to provide guidance. A good parent is a good guidance counselor, as well as a disciplinarian. If a parent abdicate those things, they're abdicating good parenting. Good parenting must be also a good disciplinarian and a good counselor. And also the first educator is the parent in the home. So therefore, if your little boy believes that he is a girl, and you go, let him go through life for his first 5, 6, 7 years believing that, that is wrong parenting. All right? You should not let him or her believe that they have the right to try to change, like the brother said, how they were born. Because in reality, you can inject hormones, you can have surgery, but you cannot change your gender at the cellular level. Because the chromosomes indicate you're male or female. So if you have the XY chromosome, that's a male chromosome, in your cells, even if you inject hormones to change your outward appearance, those chromosomes still says you're a male. And that's why those who have undergone those operations and those hormone treatments, after a while, they get very disheartened and very depressed because they realize what they thought would be something that is good for them is really not. They become depressed because they realize they're not better off trying to be a male when they're really a female or vice versa. But then here comes people that try to politicize it and say, oh, we're denying people's right to be happy. Well, who's behind this anyway? Satan. Why? Why does Satan want people to be happy in sin and wrongdoing?
Because it draws them away from God.
That's exactly right. To draw them away from God. For example, if a young person decides that he or she wants to unite with some radical group that wants to kill Americans and burn down churches and burn down synagogues, what have you, the remedy for that would be that child's home. That dad and that mom sit down with that boy. Most of the time it would be a boy. Girls normally don't think that way. Few of them do, but normally girls don't think like that. And so the job of the parent is to teach them the value and the cost of freedom. Freedom means that you have the big R word. What is that big R word? Huh? What's the big R word?
You see it right.
Responsibility. Freedom means you have responsibility. If you don't exercise the responsibility, then you lose your right to your freedom. So the problem with many of these issues is the result of the collapse of the family, lack of Christian training, and the influence of liberal ideologies be promoted even in public schools. So parenting has the duty to help sons and daughters grow up to accept their gender assigned to them at birth, because this is something that never truly can be changed, only tampered with. Can only be tempered, cannot be changed. Right, now we have those that are lobbying for legalization of mind-altering drugs. Do we have a problem with that? Is there a problem with that?
Yes.
Do we want our 15-year-olds being able to go to a store, any store, and buy pot to smoke and get high? Of course not. Of course not. There are some who say, oh, that is a child's right. They'll say, in a few more years, he or she is old enough to go to war. Why can't they decide for themselves if they want to smoke and pollute their minds with these drugs. What do you say to that? How do you answer that? How do you answer that? You're going to say the kid is almost an adult. How can you stop him or her from doing what they want to do to bring themselves happiness or a high, whatever?
You can point out scripture to them,
Right?
and you can explain to them the effects of long-term effects of what drugs will do to you after a certain amount of time.
Okay. Long term, right? Do kids think in terms of long term?
Nope, they're doing it short term.
No. Kids, teenagers think in terms of what's the next great thrill? You know, what's in it for me to make me feel exciting or with it pleasing my peer group, what have you. So therefore, they're not qualified to make those decisions. Unwanted pregnancies out of the home. How do you deal with that? Well, in the case of the old time, and I was raised with old-fashioned values, my parents told me when I turned 18, said, if you bring a child here from some girl you got pregnant, we're not giving you any more money for school. You got to drop out of school and go find a job and take care of your baby. Because we raise you, we're not raising your baby for you. They put the fear of God and fear of loss of revenue in me. And it worked. Now some will say, that is draconian. That is harsh. That is so old school, it's like a dinosaur.
We need that.
But it worked, didn't it? It worked. And so what you want are teaching values that are unaltered, that will not change with the culture, with time. Also, the state, when I say the state, I mean the government, has intruded into areas where it has no legitimate authority. That's the case of the same-sex unions. All right? When the Supreme Court declared a few years ago that was legal in all 50 states, I said to myself, whatever happened to marriage being a function of the church? And I still believe it is, by the way. But you have politicians who believe that they can change God's laws to fit a political agenda. They take polls, and the polls say, well, 60% of the people in a state or a region of the country believe this way, then they institute laws to please that majority because they want votes in the next election. But if we believe that way, then anything can be politicized. Anything can be politicized. If you have a family and your kids don't think the way you do, which many times they don't, and then you begin to make laws, you begin to change your rules to please them, pretty soon they'll be running the house, the family, right? So therefore, it should not be done. All right, now. Because the state has intruded in these areas where it has no legitimate authority, it has created an atmosphere of hostility between the church and the state. where there need not to be any. It is not my job to tell the state how to build roads. All right, that's the state's job. It is not my job to license drivers. That's the state's job. It is not the state's job to define marriage or the family. And so because they have politicized these things, they have created more problems in the country, you see. We have more problems created now because you have one authority intruding upon another. They have converted righteousness into political issues by forces who do not have the best interests of our nation or our children at heart. So I can say to you, it is always, always wrong and can be immensely dangerous to vilify a right cause and commend an unrighteous cause. That's what Isaiah was talking about. Calling evil good and calling good evil. Because when righteousness is politicized, it creates deep divisions. All the time will create deep divisions and will cause those that are controlled by their base nature to choose wrongfully. So, the problem lies in the fact that unscrupulous politicians will exploit the self-centered nature of man for the sake of getting into office. Is man self-centered?
Yes.
Do you have a scripture to prove that? That man is self-centered? That we are self-centered? What's the best scripture for that? To prove that we are self-centered.
I can't think of the exact scripture, but I know it, Solomon talks about it with our vanity.
All is vanity, right?
Yes, all is vanity.
And there's a scripture that says, denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we shall live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. That's in Titus chapter 2. All right, so the human nature is self-pleasing and self-centered. We would rather please self than please God if we leave it up to us.
Amen.
And so now you have these folks that take advantage of that and institute these laws to do what? So they can gain an advantage politically. Because if they give you what you want, they get more votes. All right? Well, the serpent gave the men and women what they wanted, and it resulted in getting homeless. They became homeless. Even though they got what they want, they lost what they had.
Amen.
All right, so now we have this common and carnal reasoning line of thought. And I quote, women have evolved into sexual beings that must be satisfied. Since nature has chosen her to be the one who bears the offspring, she should not be compelled to forfeit her right to pleasure out of the fear of becoming pregnant. You say, where was this found? This was written in the Affordable Care Act of 2011. It goes on to say, it is the duty of government to provide her with contraceptives as part of her health care needs. So that's how they justified abortion and giving out contraceptives to girls in high school, because they say that that is a right of the woman for her health care. Because they've evolved into, let me ask you ladies, have you all evolved into sexual beings? Have you all evolved into sexual beings that can't control yourselves? Is that what it's saying? Well, that's what this is saying. It's saying you can't control yourself. And so since nature has chosen you to be the bearer of the offspring, government should provide you with contraceptive and not cause you to forfeit your right to pleasure out of the fear of becoming pregnant. That's what they believe. He said this is in people's thinking, folks. So once you politicize something that is a moral issue and make it a political issue, you open the door wide for all those that want to do wrong to side with that. All right? Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. And because of that, the sister says woe means trouble, affliction. Have we seen woe develop because of this line of thinking? Have we seen woe in our country and in our society because of this? Is there more trouble? Are there more problems because of this? Of course there is. All right? So we have in our society a mindset that says, I will do what pleases me because if it pleases me, it's right. If it pleases you, does that make it right?
No.
Well, that is why you never make a moral issue the political issue. You don't start voting on things that are obviously wrong. It's like you have 2 wolves and 1 sheep voting on what's for dinner. Go back to Isaiah chapter 5. Isaiah 5. And right below the 20th verse, we have the 21st verse. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. So, some people say, this looks good to me, therefore I'll adopt it. They're wise in their own eyes. Someone look at Proverbs 14:12. Proverbs 14:12, and read it out loud, please. Proverbs 14:12. Someone look it up and read it out loud.
Proverbs 14:12.
Yes.
Okay. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death.
Okay. There is a way which seemeth right. In other words, a person will adopt that path because that is the path of least resistance. And that path pleases him or her in the flesh. And then he gets somebody to go along with that. And then if you get enough people to go along with it, it gets up to the legislature or the Congress, and they pass a law saying, oh, this is right. Why is it right? Because you have Jane Blow down there in Tampa or wherever, John Doe, he and his friends believe it's right, and they vote. All right? And they're taxpayers. So therefore you have now a politician will definitely decide to make that into a law of some sort. It happens all the time. It's happening right now. All right? That's why the country is becoming more and more ungodly. It starts with people deciding that they're going to make their own decisions regarding morality and regarding right from wrong. Are we highly evolved animals? Can you prove that?
No, and we are created in the image of God.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Then why do we have bad manners? Why do we have arguments and fights among each other?
Because we're sinners.
Because we're sinners? Okay, now let me ask you this question. If we are not evolved, we were created in the image of God, then does that mean that we should have a different mindset about things?
We should.
But why don't we?
We're still in our flesh, we're still in our sinful nature,
Why is that?
because we haven't been set free.
Are we born again, yes or no?
Yes, we're born again.
Is there a Holy Spirit?
Yes.
Can we walk in the Spirit
Yes.
and not fulfill the lust of the flesh? Yes, we can do that. But do we want to? Do we want to? All right. It requires discipline. I was telling somebody just this past week, I says, we can do anything we want to do, but it requires discipline.
Right.
To bring to captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ requires discipline. Right? It is easier to call something evil good because that requires no discipline. It requires going along with your sentiments, with your flesh. That's why I recommend women still watching soap operas, daytime dramas, because they introduce some guy, some Lothario, he begins to romance some married woman because her husband is an ogre, he's not around, and before you know it, you start rooting for that adulterer to succeed. The devil knows this, because the tendency is to call evil good and good evil. But that brings woe, it brings trouble, and it brings disastrous result into the culture. All right, Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 22. Somebody read that one.
Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink.
All right, so again, trouble is pronounced upon those that make intoxicating beverages their norm. They love being intoxicated. All right, it makes them feel good. That, my friends, is another problem in our modern society. All right, social drinking. And you might say, well, Pastor Smart, what's wrong with having a little drink with your dinner? Well, because many times they have a drink before dinner and after dinner, and then begins to cloud their mind. Because remember, our body, as you just said, is flesh.
Right.
It seeks the path of least resistance,
Yeah.
and we like to please ourselves. So whatever makes you feel good in the flesh, it is easy for you to do it over and over again. Doesn't matter who you are. Right? So we have all these problems because of man choosing to justify or politicize unrighteousness. My advice to all Christians is, do not let anybody continue to politicize righteousness and call good evil and evil good, because the end is an unending cesspool. We have to confront this travesty with faith in God and be fearless of people. Because many times we go along with the crowd because our buddies or friends say, well, I'm going this way. And you know that's not the right way, but to keep their friends, to keep the peace and not rock the boat in your little clique, your little organization, you go ahead and you go along with the crowd. The Bible says you never follow a crowd, a multitude, to do evil.
That's right.
Also, going back to Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 23, which justify the wicked for reward and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. What's this? Justifying the wicked for reward. What is that? That's, you broke the law, and I can put you in jail or punish you, but if you give me a bribe, I'll let you get off. And so it's saying bribery. You can bribe people. You can pay off people for the sake of getting off. Even wicked people. You take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Because do you know when you justify someone who have done wrong, you rob the person who has been wronged from receiving justice.
That's right.
You have this guy who violated this girl and kept her as a prisoner, and now the girl is being punished and he has been set free. Or he's given a very lenient sentence. When somebody does that, that judge is saying, I am unqualified to be a judge because I let a criminal person go free or have a lenient sentence. Calling good evil and evil good. So my friends, going back to 1973, Roe versus Wade, until this very day, that has been the downfall of our culture. Once you start to call something that is wrong, and you say it is good and justified, that's a slippery slope. Anything is valid then. All right? Keep your eyes on those that want to legitimize child pornography. All right? Because those are some wicked people that want to do that.
That's right.
Once that door is open, that's a Pandora's box of iniquity will flood into our society. Well, the church is supposed to stand up against these things. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 11, please. As a matter of fact, one of you read Ephesians 5:11.
And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them.
All right. In other words, expose things that are demonic. That is what the church is supposed to be doing. Why we don't do it? Because to do that means you have to engage in spiritual warfare. And that requires, again, discipline to stand against demonic forces. But we should be doing this. Also notice what it says in verse number 12, same chapter, Ephesians 5 and verse 12. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. Some things are a shame, or should be ashamed to speak about. Another thing is they have taken away the shamefulness of sin. All right? It used to be a shame to have a young girl still in high school being pregnant. All right? Now we have girls running around showing off their big stomach. Oh, look, I'm 7, 8 months pregnant, and that's my boyfriend over there. All right? Where did that come from? Legitimizing sin. And we have, of course, the rappers. There is no such thing as a baby daddy. You have a man who impregnated a girl out of wedlock. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
That's an irresponsible couple. And so that child is going to suffer because the mother and the father were irresponsible. But it's nothing to be proud about. We don't inspire them to be proud about those things. Those are things that we should keep. Okay, you made a mistake. Anybody can make a mistake. But don't go around saying how proud you are because you made a mistake. I mean, come on now. Where does it end? See, folks, we, the church, we are guilty of making it easy for folks to call evil good and call good evil. because we have not taken our stance and reproved it. All right, let's receive the offering now. Any final comments or questions?
Pastor, I have a comment similar to what had happened to me many, many years ago.
Why, were you president of Wedlock?
My mom would beat the devil light out of me. Thank God for a mom that put some fear of God in your life.
Amen.
Anyhow,
Besides, that would have been me, and that would have been right.
I would beat you up too.
Yes.
No, but when I was in college, back in the 90s, I think, I had to stand up on that same homosexual issue.
Mhm.
So it was very unpopular to stand up,
Right,
and I gave a speech on that.
right.
So my speech was, of course, that homosexuality is absolutely wrong, and that nobody's born that way, because that was the blame, that people were born that way.
Biological homosexuality.
Yeah, so I had to stand up for that in my class, which I
Right.
was, God gave me the boldness. So I didn't know what the professor was going to do, whatever, but that was my speech about homosexuality is wrong, and biblically speaking is wrong. So I quoted Corinthians and a few passages, and to my surprise, he gave me an A. But that's the way that
Yeah,
I remember
conscience.
standing up for what you believe. Back then, I don't know if you can do that in college. I was a secular college. It was not a Christian. It was Hillsborough Community College right here. So I stood up for that. And just like you stated, sometimes we have to stand up even when you're not popular.
Right.
And of course, at the end of that, one young lady came approached me and she said, "Wow, I didn't know you had those strong standards against homosexuality." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I believe that is wrong. Biblically speaking, it's wrong." And she said, "Well, because I am a lesbian." I said, "Well, maybe God wanted me to say this because
Right.
of you." And I was pretty bold to tell her, say, "I cannot apologize for what the Word of God says, but the Word of God said that homosexuality is wrong."
Right.
And she said, "Wow, I didn't know you had those strong feelings about homosexual." Yes, I do. So, again, that was a stand that I had to take
Mm.
in spite of whosoever was listening to me. I didn't know that I was going to have a homosexual in that class, but she was a lesbian. And I remember vividly, at the end of the class, she approached me. She said, "Wow, I didn't know you had those strong conviction about homosexuality." I said, "Yes, ma'am, because it is wrong. It's a sin. In the eyes of God, it is a sin, and I hope you repent."
Right.
So I
There's a
left
great
it at
video
that.
there. There's a video on YouTube about people who have come out of that lifestyle.
Correct. And I
They're
told her that.
repented.
I told her that,
Right.
and that was my.
But
my-
some forces don't want to have that get out there
Correct.
because they want folks to believe it is normal.
And that was the thesis, that many people, that nobody is born that way.
Correct.
So, anyway, so.
All right, so we're out of time. Let's take a song and then we'll start our morning service in a few minutes. 601 in your song. 601. Yes, Lord, yes. And let's not politicize things that are wrong just because somebody agreed with it or they like it. All stand. I'll say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Lord, yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree, and my answer will be yes, Lord, yes. I'll say yes, Lord.